Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, depending on where you are from, and if you want to go to bed, so good night to you. Okay, so we're going to continue our classes. We're able to complete the application we're working on the last class, the store app, where we got a bit of an understanding of what GetX is, right? And we got to actually play around with it. Now, of course, in the coming classes, we're going to be building, a more robust application to, um, you know, leverage on the power of GetX as a state management framework. So, but today we're just going to talk about MVVM, right? Because, of course, we need to, one of the things we need to learn is how to kind of need to understand the best architecture to use when we are actually working on a project, right? So basically, MVVM is actually an architectural pattern, right? It's a software architectural pattern. And basically what it does is that it separates the development of the user interface, which is the UI, from the business logic and the data access logic, right? It separates it from the UI from the business logic and from the data access logic, okay? And basically, this just helps you to, this separation facilitates easier maintenance and testing of your application, okay? So MVVM stands for model, view, view model, listen, model, right? So the model, view model, that's basically what it is. So the first M is model, the first V is view, and the VM stands for view model. So what do these mean individually? Model basically represents the data and the business logic of the application. And it just includes your data classes and some repository patterns for access to that data. Now, the view is just the UI component that will display the model, so that will display the data, right, and interact with the user. That's basically what the view is, right? So of course, in Flutter is basically your widgets, right? And then the view model is what acts as a bridge between the model and the view. Okay, so it's like a bridge between the model and the view. And what it does is that it handles the business logic and provides the data to the view. So it's like a middleman. Now, but we're going to look into MVVM and working with it and also working with the repository pattern. So it's like the MVVM with repository pattern in Flutter. Now, the repository pattern basically just adds an abstraction layer between the data sources. When I talk about data sources, I'm talking about your your network APIs, your local databases, right? So it kind of gives an extra abstraction, right? Extra separation of concern, an abstraction layer between your data source and the business logic. And this actually helps you to, it makes the data access code more modular and easier to even test, right? So we're going to actually use this to build a very simple application to understand, MVVM. And what we're going to be building is just, we're just going to be fetching, we're going to mock fetching data from, an API, right? But we're not going to actually use an API, but we're just going to mock that to, kind of give a more understanding of, MVVM using the repository pattern. So first of all, let me kind of do a bit of setup here. I'm going to just create some folders, right? Now, in my folder, I want to have the data, right? Now, inside this data folder, I'm going to have two things. One is the model, a model folder, and I'm going to have the repository folder. Okay, now another folder I'm going to add, we're still talking about GetX, right? So bindings, So let's just be doing so that we get used to it. So binding, so this is going to hold our bindings. Let's have routes, right? So we need I'm going to create let's say for our UI, right? And then I can also create a folder for our view model where we'll have our view models, right? I can also put the view model inside UI. Let's just separate it, right? Okay, so this is just basically, right, that. So this is just the how our folder structure actually is going to look like, right? Okay, good. Yeah, this is it. So let's work on stuff, right? So in our entry point, right? Okay. Adibole, go ahead. You have a question.
The file explorer, is it possible for it to be zoomed out a little bit? Oh,
No. What I can
no.
actually zoom more is just this part
Okay,
of the.
no problem. I will manage. I'll manage.
Yeah, or you can just if are you using a phone or a laptop?
A laptop actually. So it looks like the screen is quite smaller. Don't worry.
You can probably zoom in, or if you're even using your phone, you can actually just kind of
Okay.
try to zoom in with your two thumb. Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that. Yeah. Well, let me just check, right? Yeah, it's that stuff. That's what I can remember, or just so just manage that, right? Sorry about that. Maybe I'll look for a way to sort out maybe the next class. Okay, so yeah. So what do we want to do? Yes. Okay, where we have our what's it called? I'll go to our main, right? So this is home. I'm just going to move it into the UI, right? We're just going to use one screen, right? Just to display what we need to display. And then in our main.dart, so let's just do some, now we are going to be working with getX, right? So return get material app, right? Okay, so let's be sure I have getX installed on this. Oh, okay. I think I had yeah. Okay, so I set up getX, but I mistakenly deleted the R in Flutter. So probably have to just wait a bit for this to run Flutter pub.get, Flutter pub.get rather, and resolve dependencies. So I think that should, yeah, that should solve that. So okay, let me see. Okay, so I probably have to, let me check this dependency. Yeah, get, that is actually the latest one. Let me just see if I can kind of reload it or something. Just a second though. Okay, resolving dependencies. Okay, so let's see if I'm able to assess that, or let me try to see if I can import it manually, maybe if that will help. Let's see. Import package, get package. For some reason, it's not. Okay, so that means get has not been installed yet. So let me just take this out and I'll try to, let me clear that and then try that again, because we actually need that dependency before we can do anything. So let me paste it back. Okay, so okay, let's see. Okay, so just restarting actually fixes that, right? So okay, so yeah, so since we're making use of get, right, so we can um actually set up initial bindings, right? Of course we talked about bindings, so I'm going to just say I'm going to create a binding class called home binding, right? And then get pages, right? I want to use a route now. I think in the other class, we just had the get stuff listed here, but now I'll create a route and, kind of save it there. So I'm just going to say, I'll call it home routes. Can call it anything. And I'll just say home routes, then assess the list of pages, right? I'll say home route and assess the list of pages. So let's just start with let's start with the routes, right? Let's start with the routes. Now, here I'm going to create, let me call it home routes dot dart. And I'm going to create the class, call it home routes. So it's just going to hold a list of pages, right? So I'm going to create that final list. So I'm going to say static final pages, so call it pages, right? And it's going to be a list of pages. So the first page I'll now call the get page, right? And then the name, I'll just probably, just for now, just give it this, and then the page is going to be home screen, right? What did we name this? Home. Yeah, we just named it home. So home. So let's import this, and then so if you have more pages, you can just list them here, right? And then supply it to, you can have more pages like listed a lot of other pages, right? So home routes. So it will be home routes dot pages, right? Need to import this first. Yeah. So home routes dot what pages. So that gives us the list of what pages that should be displayed, right? And of course, that's the initial one. Now for the binding, right? We're going to I'll just create the binding class for now, and then we will populate it as we go. So home underscore binding dot dart, right? And then I'm going to create I'll create the binding, the initial binding I'm going to use. So just like we know, class home binding, and need to extend bindings like we learned. And then of course you have to override what the dependencies, right? So you have to override the dependency what function or method, right? So which we're going to do get.lazy put and then put some other stuff there. So this is just basic, this is just setup, right? Okay, so okay, yeah. So So let me just run this so that we can see changes, when it is, time. Let me just be running so that the app is just displayed. So now what we're trying to do, okay, I just want to build just a simple application whereby we're kind of like fetching a list of data, right? And it could be from the internet and all the stuff like that. But so remember when we talked about the whole concept of MVVM, right? We said that we separate, it's just a pattern where we separate the UI from the business logic and data access logic. That's MVVM, right? Model being the data. Model is actually data and the business logic when you're looking at MVVM. View is just your widgets. And then the view model is the bridge between the model and your view. So it handles the business logic and provides, the, data to the view. Model just represents the data and the business logic, but the view model is what handles that business logic. Now, but when you're now bringing in repository into the picture, you're now kind of giving an extra layer of abstraction between the data sources where the data is coming from, which could be from your local database or which could be from a network API. You're separating that from and the actual logic, business logic itself. Okay. And of course, this actually helps, makes your code a bit more modular. And of course, testing is actually easy. Okay. So knowing what we want to actually build, so where do we actually start from, right? Well, you can start from anywhere, actually. But let's start with that repository. So remember, network, right? Network or database, right? And then, it kind of, so the repository comes in between. So let's start by creating a repository class. I'm just going to call it home repository. Or just, yeah, home repository dot dart. So class home repository. So this is what is going to be here is just, let's say, a function. Let's say I want to create a function and a feature because, of course, we're trying to mix some data stuff. So let's say I want to return a feature, which is going to be a list of string, right? And I'm going to call this method to get items, to get an item. That's just what I'm going to call. I want to get item, right? And of course, I have to, I have to I want to return, for now, right? I just want to return something. Let me say feature.delayed. Let's say duration of let's say 2 seconds, right? And then what am I returning after the delay? What is the function? Remember our feature, right? It takes in what a function, right? And then of course the duration. So the function, basically just what I want to do. We're not really doing, I just want to return a list of strings now, right? So let's say a list of students. So Collins, David. We have how many Davids? So let me say David 1, David 1 and David 2. The 2 David, I think we have more than I think we have more than 1 David, 2 Davids, or maybe just 2. Okay. So yeah, so let's use something else. I think this other guy is Painter. David Painter. Okay, so I'm going to, since we are doing of course, this is a feature, right? I'll have to make this an async, right? Because I want this to run asynchronously. So async. Okay. So this is just what I want to do. So whatever function it is to get item that will make a network call, right? This is where the network call is going to happen, right here. But I'm returning a list. But this is where the network call is actually going to happen. Okay. Now, so that's the repository. Okay. Now to the view model, right? To the view model. So the view model is now going to get do the actual implementation of what the business logic, right? So this is basically what you're going to have in your view model. Let's say, let's create a new file. Home view model dot start, and home view model. Now it's going to extend the getX controller, right? It's going to extend the getX what controller, getX controller, because so this is, of course, remember what we said about the view model itself, right? It's what handles the business logic, right? It's what handles the business logic. So for the view model, now because I need access to that, I need access to this function, right? I need access to this function, get items, right? So I'm going to now like create an instance. I'm going to get the repository. So home repository, right? Now, the reason I'm making this, final, right? I'm going to pass it into this home view model constructor so that when you are instantiating the view model, you pass in the what constructor. So I'll say required this dot repository, oh, sorry, home repository, right? Okay. Now, yeah, that's that. So let's just create an observable variable here. So I'll say var items equals to, this is a list, right? Dot obs, right? But much more, I want to say that it should be a list of strings, all right? I want to be explicit, right? Okay, so I want to now create a function that will do the actual stuff. So fetch, let's say fetch items, this is a function. And then now, of course, it has to be an async, right? And then I'm going to do this in a try and catch. So I can just say try, and what do we want to try first, right? What do we want to try? What we want to do is, first of all, let me just do this. Print fetching items, right? And then var fetched items is now what? Await dot, await rather, and then I'm going to say home repository dot, and then I'll call get items, right? So now I now have the value of the items I've fetched, and I can do whatever I want with it. Okay, so let me now just print let's go items, let me just say fetched items, okay. And then so that's basically what we want to do now. But after fetching it, right, what do we actually want to, after we have fetched it, I want to store it or save it to this empty list here. So I'm just going to say items dot value. Remember, when you're using the obx, you use the dot value to add access the actual listen. So fetched items. Okay, so now a try block must be flowed with an on, catch, or finally. So we're just going to use the catch. And then of course with the E. So what are we trying to catch? So we're just, in case there's an error, right? In case there's an error, let's just print out, let's say failed to fetch items. And then it should show us the error, which is E, right? That represents the error, okay? So yeah, this is the view model, right? So let's just run through, and then I'm just going to go back and we'll get to look at it again and ask ourselves, is this really necessary, right? So what do we so we have, okay, we have our routes, we have our repository, we have our view model, right? Now the next thing is, okay, how do we now get to use it in our UI, right? So what happens now? The view model is what would now supply what data to the what UI. So let's go to our UI, which is this our home.dart, where we have this. So let me just clear this and then let's do something else. Now, the interesting thing is this. Now, because it's a network, we are mimicking the network, you know, operation. So one of the things you can do is, okay, we want to fetch something, but you shouldn't just kind of keep the user, when you open the application, you just keep the user like that, right? The user needs to know that, oh, okay, something is coming. You need to be able to make the user know that, oh, data is coming, something is actually coming. So it means that we need to watch the, where is our view model? We need to watch these items. Remember, it's an object, so we need to watch it. If it is empty, right, then it should just show more like an indicator. When we run it the first time, it should just show an indicator, right, if it's empty. But if it is not, then it should give us what is the content of it. So let's go to our home. Yes. So first of all, what I'm going to do is to get an instance of our view model. So file, let's say home view model, home view model. So I'll say get.find, right? Get.find home view model. But remember also, before you can use get.find, right? Get, sorry, get, it means that you must have, kind of instantiated it somewhere, right? So it means that we need to go to our binding and we'll definitely have to restart this. So get.find what this. Now, when you find it, then you can now say home view model dot get fetch items, right? So we want to what fetch the what items. So when this is built, this widget is what's built, we need to fetch the items. So let's just go to our binding so that we won't have any errors, right? So in our binding, we're going to put two things, the repository and the view model. So get.lazyputs. So we need our, what exactly are we, let's say the home view model, right? Good. And then we now need to pass in a builder, right? More like a function. So, but we just use this and I'm saying home view model. Now remember our home view model takes a repository. So here we'll also say get.find the home repository. Sorry. Get.find the home repository. Right? So above it, I'm going to lazily put the home repository also. Home repository. And so then I'm just going to say home repository. So we'll have to restart this, but let's just finish this up. Okay, so back to our home, right? So after fetching the items, right? So let's go to the UI. So what I want to do, I'm not just going to return. So let's, I'm going to wrap this center here, not down to the scaffold. I need to, okay. Yeah, so I know. So you can see we already have this error because I refreshed and this, it cannot create this. It can't find this home view model, right? It can't find this home view. I need to actually do a restart. Okay, but let's just complete the UI, right? So what I want to do here is I want to, this is basically what I want to do. And let me just show you. So we have the center. Let me take out this text, right? Now I want to check, before the particular widgets that will be shown, I need to show either a circular progress indicator if, it's empty. That means it's still loading. Remember, we have a delay. So that means the very first time it's going to delay. So it's going to be loading, right? If it's loading, it should, that means the list is empty, right? So it should show a circular progress indicator. But once it is done, once the list becomes, uh, once the list actually now has items, means that this particular, um, what this particular API, whatever it is here, right, has actually been returned. Remember, we want to return a list. So once the list is returned, it's now from the view model, that list is now gotten and stored here, which is now assigned to these items, well, it means that we now have a list of items. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, okay, David, go ahead.
Can we increase the duration for that call? Maybe like
Yes, you
6,
can
so that
you can use like you can use 10. So how many do you want me to use? Let's use 5. Okay, so this is where I'm going to use an OBX. Remember, we are listening to, we have to, what we want to do is dependent on the, the items, right? And the items is actually an OBX. So we need the OBX widget. So I'm going to call the OBX here, right? And I'm going to use this. So I'm going to say if home view model dot items dot is empty. If it is empty, what I want to return is a circular progress indicator, right? Which you can style however you want. Else, or I don't even need to see else, I'll just say return, right? Because if this doesn't work, it will come out of there. So I'll just say return. So let's now display it in a list view builder, right? So I'll just say, because it's a list now, so it's a list view builder. So the item builder, let's say, okay, so let me just bring this down. Now for the item count is going to be the size of that item, items dot length, sorry, items dot length. And then the builder, what we want to return, let's just return a list tile. We don't need to do any serious stuff. That's its title, right, is a text, right? Because the list tile, the title is a widget, so it's a text. Now the text, of course, we're not going to hard code anything. It's just going to be or access the list, right? Whatever it's in that particular index, right? That's basically what we are going to do, right? And that will give us, the particular item there. Okay, so that's actually that. So let's just rerun this so that we have, we have our home repository and home view model. So you can see instantiated, right? So home view model has been created, home repository has been created, home view model has been initialized. So you can see what happens here. So you can see the list, right? Now, let's take a step back. And let's see what happens. So what happens is when you actually run this, what happens is, of course, this took 5 seconds, right? So the home view model, you can see printing, fetching items, right? And then you can now see that it's it gets the items, right? It gets the value and everything, and it initializes the home view model, right? And then fresh items, it returned the fresh items for us, which is what we have here. Okay, so that's actually that. Let me just implement because I want to be able to refresh this list. So let's do something. This is scaffold. So body ends here. So um, yeah, floating action button. Okay, so let me put a floating action button, and I actually just want to. I just want to be able to kind of like refresh and fetch again because we don't have that. I don't want to be. I don't want to do that only from my. Okay, so well, we also have the property child on the floating action button. So I want to give it an icon. Icons dot refresh. We should have that. We should have refresh. Yes, we should. Okay, so um okay, so let's save that. Okay, so let me clear this okay, so when I click on this now, you can see fetching items, right? Fetching items and then fetched items, but you are not seeing this here. So let's try something. Um, can I let's do something. I want to yeah. Before fetching, let's see if I can. Let's see something. I want to test something. Okay, so clears the list and then takes about 5 seconds and then we have that, right? So clear the list, right? And then it fetches the items, right? So what's the implication, right? What's the implication of this? So coming to talk about, okay, need to dot fetched items. Okay, not overfetched. Access denied. Okay, something else. So it's possible there's no, we have cleared the list. So it's so I've cleared the list, so there's no it's not calling. Let me see. Yeah, so get items. I guess it's just taking a bit of time. But let me explain what I wanted to explain. So what happens now, and the whole essence of the whole repository, like I said, is just to add an extra layer of abstraction. Now you notice that if you want to, if assuming this was a very large code base, right? Assuming this was a very large code base, what would happen is if you needed to make some changes from an API perspective, and everything is done in the view model, right? Your API call and your API, you know, business logic and everything, you'd have a lot of work to do, and testing it is not actually going to be easy, right? So this now abstracts stuff so your home repository is responsible for assessing the network calls. So if there's any issue, if there's any change you need to make on the network, you just go there. Let's say, for example, you just change the API there and you change it everywhere and there's no issue. That's the only place. You just go separation of concern. You just go there and sort that out, right? The view model, if you haven't, if you need to make any changes, the API still stays the same. That file is not, it remains untouched. You can test that separately. You can test this particular one separately. So it's more of abstraction. That's the whole essence of MVVM, right? And then using repository is just an added, giving you an added abstraction with layer such that you have a particular class that is focused on assessing your database or the network APIs, and then another class that is actually doing the handling that business logic. So your repository is just going to do what this that HTTP gets or whatever gets this. That's just what your repository is going to do, right? Yeah, maybe you've created a client somewhere, HTTP client, right? And it just what returns this. It hits that endpoint. It just hits that endpoint, right? Your view model is what is now going to what handle the actual what logic of, okay, fine, give me the result. The result of that of hitting that endpoint is gotten in your view model and used as it, as it sees fit. Okay, so that's the whole concept of MVVM, right? That's the concept of MVVM and what's it called? And with the repository pattern. So are there any questions before we round this up? Okay, so I believe there are no questions. So in the absence of none, so this is where we're going to call it timeout. This is just a task for you to take home, right? Maybe I'll, yeah. So I want you to what's it called? And I want to see the file, right? You can probably just post your this thing test file for me, but I want you to, and maybe a screenshot of the results. Yes. So I want you to test this home repository. I want you to carry out a test on this home repository and a test on the view model. Yes, I want you to carry. We've learned testing. We've talked about unit tests, right? So, and we did some stuff on unit testing. So I want you to test the repository and to test the home view model. Okay, so that will be the task for you. You submit it on the LMS, but just do that on the Discord first. So I want to see your test file. In fact, send it directly to me. Don't drop it on the channel. Send it to me, your test file and your and the screenshot of the tests running. Okay. So that'll be all for today, guys. Thank you very much. David, go ahead.
What will you be expecting if you run the test?
Sorry, come again.
What will you be expecting if you run the test?
Your test to either pass or fail now. So your test is to pass. You were around when we did testing now, right?
Yeah.
So the essence of testing a code is to be sure that it works as expected. So you can just take a step back to the testing class that we had and just refresh your memory.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be all, right? That would be all. So I expect to, yeah, today is Thursday, right? Yeah, I expect to see that before the end of tomorrow. It's not really a big deal, right? It's not not a big deal.
Hello.
Yes,
I
David.
want to ask a question outside the recording.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so thank you guys very much. Yeah.